else coming over for the Unstuck show. I figured, it's always just me talking outward. Why not try something different? So anyway, we'll wait here just another minute and I'll grab my papers and all that jazz. All right. I see Tiffany and Danielle. I wonder if they're going to make the leap and come over. We'll have to see. It's a bit nerve-wracking, right? You have to be seen on video, but we're all fine.
Oh, I'm used to it. I like it. So
that's right, because you work fully remote. Is that right? Technical co-founder, CTO.
Yep, that's right.
That's right. I remember that. And how's work?
Really good. Really good.
Good. And what part of the world are you in? I forget. Looks nice outside.
It's hot. It's Southern California.
Oh.
Yeah.
So is it gotten to be 100 yet? 3 digits?
I'm pretty close to the beach, so it usually doesn't get that hot, but I think it's like 95 today.
So
and
everyone
I don't have
has
air conditioning, so
I was gonna say everyone has air conditioning, right?
I don't.
You don't?
No. The community that I'm in, the houses were built in the 60s, and they don't really have air conditioning. It's not common.
So do you just sit in sweat, essentially?
Yep, basically.
Now, do people down? Okay, I have to know because up here in Oregon, we use these things called swamp coolers.
We don't use this.
No, those aren't cool anymore, are they? Those are like hillbilly air conditioners.
Yeah, I don't know if they ever were really used out here. I've never heard of anybody like around here ever even using that term, swamp coolers. Like I know because I lived in Florida for a while, but yeah.
Right. And I think they must have that term because they basically create a small swamp in your house of just like so much humidity, right? The walls are like shiny and kind of dripping down. And,
not good for if you're trying to keep mold or anything down.
No, probably not good for electronics. I mean, to be honest.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, let's see here. So if nobody else joins us, we can just have a conversation. But I hope a few other people. See, I told people last week we were going to do this. It's 10:04. We'll see what happens. So, and you know what? If we decide not to publish this recording, we'll just throw it in the trash if anything interesting happens or we talk about anything we say. No one else needs to hear about that. So,
cool.
Let's see. Okay, so I have a question. I just got some feedback from somebody on an article I wrote, and they have the premise. They're like, every programmer hates meetings. And they said programmers always universally hate meetings. They hate anything that takes them away from coding and typing because that's all they want to do. And this person was like, quit hurting them by dragging them into meetings and asking them for ideas, you big jerk. And I was like, okay. So you're shaking your head. Do you think all programmers hate meetings?
No, so this is something I've learned very recently. I used to always assume that programmers hate meetings and that it wasn't worth bringing them into meetings because they would rather be coding.
Right.
And so the first couple of years that, I started building up my team, I did everything I possibly could to keep them away from meetings. Like
just in the code, like
minimal, I mean, even to the point of, if you're going to have a meeting with them, I want to know what's going on ahead of time, like, so that the meeting's productive.
Sure.
That sort of thing. So like we would have backlog grooming meetings with developers, and then I would have like a separate backlog grooming beforehand so I could vet what like product was going to talk to them about so that it was like a productive meeting and it was like very, very focused. But as the team started to grow, I mean, we went from having like 2 or 3 developers to now we have 8. Really what started to happen was a lot of the developers were like, we don't really have very many meetings. I feel like I don't know what's going on.
And that's the other side of the coin is what else is happening?
Yeah. And so a lot of it came down to, I think, Pretty much anybody, it's not just developers, they hate meetings that are not productive, like that don't get anywhere, or they're just talking about the same thing that they talked about last week, or nobody really has any answers, or nothing moves forward and nothing comes out of it. Right. So, I mean, I'm very sensitive about having too many meetings, that I feel like my team is in too many meetings, and I'm constantly asking them in one-on-ones, how do you feel about the balance of meetings? And they're all saying, I'm fine. It's great. I know what's going on. It's productive. We know, we're talking about things. I'm like, okay, well, if you say you're fine, like, I'm going to keep out, but I'm going to keep asking you. And as soon as you say that you're not fine, then we can do something about it. We'll block off, we'll say no meetings on Wednesdays so that you can say heads down or something like that. But,
okay. Thank you very much. My dog needs to be put someplace. Give me a second. Come here, dog. Here's my dog. She's quite cute, but also barky. Okay, you go up there. There we go. Yeah, and by the way, U50A51, hi, thanks for joining us. If you wouldn't mind, turn on your video for us. Not sure who we're talking to, so hope we get an opportunity to meet you. But I think it's just, Ryan, I just want to hit on that. Like, I was thinking about this idea. Isn't a meeting just really a gathering of people to talk about work stuff in a semi-structured way and exchange ideas and all that other stuff? And it feels like that's very similar to what people do, maybe with a little less structure, at coffee shops and pubs and meetups. Like, if programmers didn't like meetings, why would they go to so many meetups,
Yeah, I fully agree.
So I think there's kind of a fallacy there. I think for this person, the thing that made me think was the person who wrote this doesn't like meetings. They feel that meetings have been inflicted upon them. And I had to actually step back, because like many of us, when we've written something or done or said anything, and someone comes back with a contrary response, it's very easy to come back and say, like, well, you're wrong. And I wanted to avoid doing that. So I haven't responded, but I did think to myself, boy, you hate meetings. And wherever you work, I bet the meetings really suck.
Yeah, one of my developers told me at one point too, like, you're not, as a developer, you're not paying me to just like write code all day long. You're paying me to solve a problem. And if being in a meeting to discuss the problem and help solve it is part of it, and then that's how I'm going to be more effective. Right.
Yep. And I think that hits the nail on the head. Do you ever see companies where they say one group's, like, it's this department's job to solve the problem, maybe these are the architects, and it's this group's job to implement things? Have you ever seen that before?
I have. I don't think it works very well.
I don't think it works very well either. I think if I were over here in this group, I would not like it. And if I were over here in this group, I probably would think too highly of myself, as though I were some sort of wizard, or too important to handle the dirty details of programming or something like that.
Yeah, which sometimes, like, the devil is in the details. So they might have this really great, like, they think it's this really great idea. It's very abstract, and it's very elegant, but it doesn't actually work. And if they actually were the ones that had to write the code to support it, they'd realize, oh wow, this is way more complex, or this is not the ideal way to go. But yeah, because there's that division, you got one side saying what to do and the other side just doing it, and not really having a mind of their own.
Yeah. Well, it looks like we've got a caller, and I'll try one more time. Hey, can the person who's identified only as U50A51, looks like you've called in on the phone. Can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. Who's this?
This is Mary Grant.
Hi, Mary. How are you?
I'm good, and you?
I'm very well. Are you the only person on your line? are different folks. I see other people in the list, but you're the only one on this phone line?
Yes.
Okay, well, Mary, what do you think about this idea? How do programmers that you work with feel about meetings?
They're not a fan. They don't like to speak out openly.
Oh, now that's a different take. So do you think they don't mind the attendance? Like it's sort of a coffee break, but they don't like to talk? Or would they just rather not be in any meetings?
In my experience, I don't think they mind the break per se, but I don't think they feel comfortable with discussion or speaking, especially if it's in reference to a new process, without really being able to break down and see what they're talking about and outlining it, being familiar with it first.
Interesting. So who's in these meetings where these programmers aren't comfortable talking? Is this the vice president and nobody's comfortable, or just other programmers, or like, do you think it's a matter of the audience?
I don't think so. I think that the programmers I work with, either they're okay with speaking out loud and you have the same one speaking all the time and feel comfortable with make a mistake or saying, I don't know, but I can find out, versus those who are an introvert and just does not want to speak out, be narrowed out, anything like that.
Okay. So maybe we do have some personality. I think in any, we were just talking about the programmers going to meetups. I've been to meetups and seen people who didn't talk to anybody. They went in, they got their pizza, they listened to the presentation, and they left. I don't think they spoke to anyone else. And other people who were there early and stayed late because they just enjoyed it. So maybe there's some people enjoy interaction and find it, engaging and energizing more than other people. But in a meeting, Mary, would you just, and Ryan, same with you maybe, would you guys just love to have everybody's viewpoint in a perfect world where you had more voices in the room?
Oh, yes.
Maybe. I mean, I think that at some point there's too many cooks in the kitchen, then it's not productive. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I definitely do see, within our organization, I do see that there's some developers that will very readily talk, like speak up and work through a problem and talk it out. And there are other developers that will be quiet in an entire meeting until they absorb all of the information, and then they're comfortable giving their opinion.
Yeah. Well, here, let me grab a book, Mary. I think this might help. I've talked about this book in the past, this book called The Surprising Power of Liberating Structures. Mary, I don't know if you can see video, if you're just calling in on audio, but that's the name of the book, The Surprising Power of Liberating Structures. And it has these really, really simple meeting formats that can be done with anywhere from 4 people to 100 people. And the idea is that different formats of meeting and different patterns in the meetings can give different personality types, introvert, extrovert, as well as people who are more or less used to talking, people who are more or less used to taking a risk with their ideas. Basically, it gives everyone an opportunity to contribute. And the idea is there's these liberating structures, as they're called. With a liberating structure, we sort of empower everyone to contribute ideas, and we do that. Oftentimes it's done, for example, there's one particular one called, I think it's called 1, 2, 4 all, where people start by writing on a card and then discussing in pairs and then getting in small groups and then sort of having a bigger conversation with the whole team. You might find that a little of this goes a long way, if that makes any sense, that you don't have to use them all, you don't have to use them exclusively, but maybe you could start to get new ideas through a slightly different meeting format, which implicitly, if you tell everyone, okay, I would like you to answer this question on this card, you're not throwing it out there and saying whoever wants to speak an idea, you're saying, I want everyone to generate an idea. And Ryan, it could be for you that part of this is actually idea management. Because what you have is you have some really vocal people who talk. And I think your hesitancy, and I identify with this too, comes from, oh my gosh, if everybody argued about everything, right, ad nauseum, we'd never get anything done. So maybe some of these liberating structures could be useful to you in your work. Mary, do you when you see meetings that where the same people aren't talking, have you tried to sort of draw them out?
Yes, and I've tried to keep them engaged. One in particular that I'm having issues with now it's a pattern. It's in meetings, it's asking for help, it's saying, I don't know on something in general, not just in meetings, but in general with code or development. So,
and they will do that, or they won't do that?
They will not.
They will not. Okay. So
and I'm trying something different.
Yeah.
Where I'm pairing them up with a vocal developer, and they can meet together and run ideas across each other. And then that way in a meeting, if she doesn't feel comfortable, her actual partner can speak up for both of them. And that has gotten her a little bit vocal.
Okay. Okay. So in this case, somebody has a problem. They're stuck. They don't know what to do. They get blocked, whatever, but they're not very quick to not just to talk in a meeting, but also to acknowledge they don't know, to talk about their problem. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Okay, so I notice we've got a couple other people with us, Yvette and Chian.
Cayenne.
What was
Cayenne.
it?
Cayenne.
Cayenne. Very nice to see everyone here. What other advice or ideas could we generate when we've got somebody who hesitates too long to ask for help, who seems to, we could talk about why, we could get into all kinds of weird psychology stuff, but the outward symptom here is somebody may spend more time being stuck, right? Or may not ask and might start assuming. So I love the idea of pairing them with a more vocal person. What other suggestions could we try? So quiet now, isn't it? Cayenne, Yvette, Brian, any thoughts here? Has this ever happened to anyone else? Maybe it's just Mary.
I've had similar issues. Maybe not necessarily to the warrant that it was a problem, but it's usually something I just addressed in their one-on-ones. Just encouraging them to speak up more and helping them realize that other people are contributing ideas that there may not be fully fleshed out, stuff like that, and it's just a conversation.
Okay.
But that's the extent of it, and that's prompted some people to realize, okay, the stakes aren't as high as maybe I'm expecting they are, or that the bar is not so high that I'm setting, that they can kind of adjust their expectations, bring it back down, and make it a free-flowing conversation. So
you actually just talked about it. Just had a conversation where you talked about how you noticed what was happening, and I don't know, maybe you asked why it was happening or what was going on in their head. Yeah, I mean, it was really usually just something very open-ended. It's a conversation I've had with several different developers, and usually goes something along the lines of, hey, I noticed that when we're on Hangouts, you're muted 90% of the time, why is that? Just something general, not like accusatory, but just like what's going on, and various reasons. But sure. Okay, so maybe we can talk to them. Yvette or Cayenne, have you encountered this situation? Maybe not. Mary, when you've spoken with them directly about this, do they kind of have a why reason behind the scenes? a reason for the hesitancy?
No. In fact, trying to get them to explain even what their thought process is on a one-on-one. A prime example. We have been working on a story that should have taken max 1 week of development, took 4 weeks, and it finally took me breaking down and saying, what have you done? Show me your process. Where do we need to go from there? What was your design? She has a hard time giving us design. She has a hard time of explaining her code change. So I had to have 2 other developers come in and assist me to help her with the functionality. So it ended up being she didn't even know the functionality or understood it, but never once said, hey, Mary, can I get some assistance? Or reach out to, and I would reach out to her every day. Hey, if you are having issues, concerns, here are 3 developers that has capacity that can assist you. Never once did it until I reached out to her finally and said, where are you at? What have you done? What needs to be done?
Okay. Couple of questions. Are there language and or cultural differences between you and her, or between her and the other people on the team?
No, sir.
No. Okay. So we don't have, because we know different societies, different cultures act differently, right? Western and Eastern is a prime example of how people give feedback and ask for help. There's a lot of differences there. We just need to be aware of.
Agree.
Okay.
And so I made sure that the developers assisting her was with the same culture.
Okay. And then do you get a sense that that there's just do you think it's a skill issue in terms of her ability to develop software, that she's maybe not as far along or as others think she is?
Yes, you hit it. That's what I believe, because she is a senior developer. She's been developing for 12 years.
It's a long time. Okay.
Yes.
Now, have you always seen this behavior, or is this relatively new? Because, golly, life happens to all of us, right?
Correct. I worked with her in prior years, and she knows her stuff in certain functionality. I could ask her, hey, here's a design that I'm thinking, where would we touch the code and what is the impact? And she could give it to me. But as we moved along on new functionality and a new process being implemented, she fell behind. She quit talking. She quit giving ideas. She quit giving me information. She quit knowing the knowledge, so she would not speak. 2, wouldn't even take stories, wouldn't even do development. It was pulling teeth. And our design, we as the developers all met together and discussed each story, pulled up code to determine where will the changes be, are there impacts, what are the downstream impacts. And she would always be absent for that meeting. So would never get stories done and someone would ever have to follow it through. Well, she had become better with me working with her and giving ideas and pairing her up with another developer. And then I went to another team. I've been on that other team for about 2 years. I just got put on a new team that she is on.
Okay.
And it's the worst I've ever seen.
Okay. And so how would you, on a scale of 1 to 10, how, like 10 being the highest, how would you rate the amount of trust that you and her share?
1.
A 1. Both ways? Bidirectionally?
I don't know what her thoughts are of me. We had a really good rapport when I left, but now that I'm back, she doesn't like that I ask questions. Well, have you thought of this? Or what about this? And she said to me the other day, you're not the developer. You are correct, but it is impacted, so tell me what you're thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And she completely missed it.
So we've got some defensive-ness. We've got her absent or checked out maybe at times. And then what's her relationship like with her teammates?
No one wants to work with her. Our analysts do not want to be an analyst on her story at all.
Okay.
Like when she volunteers for a story to code, it's pulling teeth to get an analyst to do the analyst work.
Oh, I see. So she'll pull a story and pair with an analyst to do something and then take the story and run with it. Every process
Yes.
is. So have you considered, have you read the book Radical Candor?
No.
You
What's
might.
it called?
It's called Radical Candor, Candor. I'm trying to find it on my shelf here. Of course. Oh, there it is. Radical Candor. Basically, this book gives you a framework for giving hard feedback that people absolutely need to hear without sort of, there's kind of these axes. And the ones I always remember are ruinous empathy, which is where we just pretend everything's fine and that person does not improve. And in fact, it actually hurts their performance in their career. And to the other side is, well, they don't quite say it this way. I'll see if I can find it, but it's something like just being a complete jerk. There's obnoxious aggression. We want to avoid that. And manipulative insincerity. So the idea is we want to hit on this part of the quadrant where we care personally and also challenge directly. Now, I'm just suggesting it. It's a good book. It's Kim Scott, is one of these Google people who's really smart. And so anyway, I might suggest this. But in some ways, yeah.
Definitely, I will take anything. I'm getting it on my Amazon. I mean, I need it because I don't want to see anyone fail. And I feel that if I can't communicate more effectively with her, she could be being set up to fail.
You know what?
I'm having a hard time with that.
I was actually going to ask, and I know we've got other people on the call, so you can choose not to answer, but if this situation were happening at the big enterprise, and I think I know what enterprise you guys work at, but if it was happening at the big enterprise I worked at, this person would actually be in danger. They'd be in danger of losing their job. They would be headed down a path of formal discipline out the door. It wouldn't take too long once the big trigger got pulled on that first verbal warning, written warning, final warning, and you're out. That process is usually pretty compressed because by the time we enter into it, the company and the managers oftentimes already made the decision that I'm wiping my hands of this. Like, I'll go through the steps.
The perception's there.
Yeah. Yeah. So this person is actually in a highly dangerous situation for their own.
And she's a mom with kids and a family. And I can't have that. I've got to do everything to exhaust to make sure she doesn't get down that path.
Well, Mary, you can't save her, but you can alert her. See, at the end of the day, I think, because I actually was a pretty much a problem developer, different symptoms, but I went through my phase. But I will tell you, you can alert her. So this is the first question. Do you think that she sees the danger, right? She's driving along a cliff with no guardrail and she's going too fast, right? Somebody else would tell her, you're going to hurt yourself. Does she see the danger that she's in?
I don't think so.
So maybe the kind
I don't think anyone's paid enough attention to even care. But now the project that we're on is very, very high on the radar.
Okay. But so that might be an opportunity. I get this sense, Mary, that you actually do care, that it's not project failure that it's gut-wrenching you. It's this person's failure and the impact that this choice might have, this choice not to do their job sufficiently, is going to have on their personal life and their kids, and it's going to be tough, right?
Yeah, and I just don't think that she's been given the correct feedback or coaching for her to even know that what she's doing. I mean, she's got to know what she's doing isn't right or isn't correct, or maybe she hasn't been given the feedback, or feels that, or maybe she got in trouble for something she didn't know before, and so she's kind of pulled back on it. So I still haven't gotten to the root of it, but she won't really work with me to get to the root of it.
And at this point, I hate to say it, I'd love to know the root of it. We could be really, and you're so empathetic. I think that's where the key of this comes from, is you actually care about this person. I feel like the kindest thing you can do is have a behind closed doors, candor-filled conversation where you simply say many of the same things you said right here. People don't want to work with her. The team wants to route around her. Analysts don't want to be on her stories. People are having to pick up her, right? It's just one of these things where, now I don't know if you have the authority to say this, Mary, but the reality is what do you have the power to remove her from the team? Whose job is it to institute and begin formal discipline? Not that maybe we're at that point, but it sure smells like we're getting close.
I am not in that power, but her lead is visible now and seeing things that he hasn't seen before. But in his defense, he has come and said, do you have suggestions? What can we do? What are your thoughts? Because he knows that I'm like, well, you can't just jump in and say what. We've got to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my opinion is at some point, and it seems like you have the clearest view, and you also have the project, overall project delivery responsibility. Somebody, probably you, need to sit down behind closed doors and say, I just want to line up what I see. And all these dots, all these points in the graph of low motivation, disconnected from the team, you're checked out, you can't explain why you did it, you don't ask for help, you're defensive. All this stuff leads me to a constellation that says you're not the kind of team member that is going to work on, I can have on this project. And, either we can start to resolve and improve things, or I've got to escalate it. But I need you to see what I'm seeing to give you a fair opportunity, so that we can talk about excuses why, I hate to say it, but like why somebody didn't listen to you when you were 10 years old, or why somebody else was mean to you. We're beyond that. We have to just face facts that either this is going to get dealt with, or you're going to get fired. Probably you're going to be removed from the project at the least.
Agree.
That's a hard conversation to have, but I can tell you from personal experience that I was a really stubborn, defensive, hard-hearted programmer that thought I was really good, and I really wasn't very good, that got into some really bad habits. And my boss hinted for about 6 months, hint, 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 nudge, more forceful hinting. It wasn't until he wrote me up in a formal discipline manner and put me on an action plan. And even then, to be frank, the first action plan didn't do it. I just got mad. I just thought, you're a jerk. You don't even know the value I'm bringing to this company. I was so arrogant and young. He had to go to the second written warning where he looked at me and said, in 2 weeks, I will fire you if you have not decided to change this behavior. Holy crap.
Wow.
Something about that statement, and I'm literally quoting it now because it's been 23 years and I still remember it, that I remember it was like a slap in the face, not in a bad way, but like somebody waking you up. And it was in that moment where I was like, oh, this is real. I'm going to lose my job. I'm the only breadwinner. I have 3 kids at home. My wife's in nursing school. What? This is going to ruin my life. And then I had to go out and say, is it worth, do I want to keep it? And as soon as I realized I did, then I was willing to basically do whatever it took. And then I had to spend a whole year regaining his trust by meeting with him at the end of every single shift and talking about what I accomplished that day. Because just like this other person you're talking about, I would go away for weeks and just claim everything was fine and come back and not show anything. So he put me on a very short leash, not to punish me, but to build trust in really tiny day-sized increments. Does that make sense?
It does. And I was in a very similar situation where I had so much going on in my personal life that coming to work, I was in such a fog and I was not given 110%. And I was just so used to the day-to-day routine. And I'm thankful that I'm able to look back now, and I've learned from that. And that's why I don't judge and automatically say, oh, you're lazy or you're not doing your job. So that's why I'm like, is there something outside going on that has altered or changed? And she doesn't have to tell you. So I try to pick up on those pieces before I finally just say, she's a loser. I would never say that, but, get her off my team. She's not a great developer. She's affected my project.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would never do that for that same reason. Things happen.
Well, one of the things I think great leaders do is they look back and they find their stories. And I feel like, Mary, you've got a story there that you can build instant empathy if you choose to use it to say, I sure remember a time. And I want to talk for a minute about a time when I was not really present at work and all this stuff was happening and nobody knew it and it was really hard. And it wasn't until I saw the real impact and I started to sense that I had checked out too much. And I realized that was going to have that was actually going to make my personal situation a lot worse. And so, not that she has to share everything with you, but you have a story where you were not all in, rah at a time. And maybe that's the kind of story that can open up a new conversation where you can just admit that you've at least been in that situation, but now you see her dangerously, precariously, in a dangerous situation where she may lose some of the things that are very important to her. And even if you can't fire her, it seems like you could say, I've been around this company long enough to see that everybody has highs and lows, but eventually the lows, if people are checked out, they're gone. I'm just saying, I've seen it happen. And that I don't want that to happen to you, because I remember a time when we had a good working relationship. And so this is my way of saying I want you to be aware of this and I want to help if I can. Anyway.
Thank you.
The difficult situation. Okay, so let's see. We've talked a little bit about programmers in meetings. We've talked about a problem programmer. What other questions, Yvette or Kian or Ryan, or what other situations, and even Mary, are top of mind today?
I'll jump in. I feel like I'm trying to get better at one-on-ones.
Okay.
I have them scheduled regularly with everybody on my team. I guess really the only problem that I'm having is that they end up being really short. Everybody's like, I don't really have anything to talk about. I don't really have any, I don't have any issues, or, the issues that they have are minor and known and already being addressed or whatever. But they're not really as meaty of discussions as they were when they started several months ago.
Okay, so you've been doing it a few
part of me is maybe I'm being concerned for nothing because everything's fine, but part of me is concerned that there's I don't get the sense that they're withholding anything. I guess I feel like by having the one-on-ones, some issues got surfaced. We've solved those issues. Things are smoothed out. People are happy. Now what do we talk about?
Okay. You're agile, right?
Yes.
Everyone's agile. Golly, I haven't run into anybody in the last 5 years that says, no, we're strictly, well, I know one guy that's waterfall, but okay. So do you do retrospectives?
Of the one-on-ones?
No, just in general in your Agile process with your team.
We do. I do not attend them.
Okay. So yes, you hit a nail on the head. Do you do Agile? Do you do one-on-one retrospectives?
I have not yet. That is on my like next round of one-on-ones. I'm going to kick off doing retrospectives about it, because that was going to be my first step to figure out like what else do they want out of this, because I feel like our 45-minute one-on-ones are always 15 minutes because they're like, hey, everything's great. Can I get back to work?
Right. So how often do you, so you might, I think there's I put together a list, or it was on my email or something like that, of the kinds of things you could talk about. I don't know if you saw that one, but you might discuss, what's working and what's not. But also, how often should you meet? Doesn't have to be the same with every person. The length of time you meet. Maybe you decide that you want to meet, for example, if you're going to do weekly, maybe the first 3 weeks are 15 to 20 minutes, and the fourth week is 45 minutes, right? A catch up. Now, you mentioned that they don't bring any issues. What would you really love to talk about for one-on-ones?
I mean, I'm interested in just hearing, how they feel about, their workload, what sort of obstacles they have, what ideas they have to, improve their working environment, anything about our process, anything that's going on, and just in general, about them, like how they're doing.
Okay. And do you talk about their career? Do you give them clear, direct, actionable feedback about how they could be improving, leveling up? What would make them in line to become a senior programmer, senior architect, a team lead, whatever, a product owner, whatever they wanted, continuing to challenge them?
That's maybe some area I probably haven't. Part of it is I'm hesitant to, like, it sounds bad, but I don't know another way to say it. I'm hesitant to encourage them to, like, want to move up to a next level, because we are a small team and there's not really another level for them to move up to. So, like, I've got so many senior developers, they can't all be team leads.
Right. And they probably don't all want to be team leads.
Yeah. But there's not an area for them to really move to. And the mid-level guys, they can move up to they can grow to being senior. So, I do talk to them about that and a little bit. But we're not putting in like an action plan of like, well, this is what you got to do. And I'm trying to avoid setting an expectation that like, hey, there's a promotion at the end of this. Because
I think that's good.
Such a thing doesn't exist.
Let me ask, do you have daily interactions, or is a one-on-one needed if you do have those daily interactions with your team and you do speak with them when a problem or an issue results right then and there? Because I find sitting across from my lead that if I am struggling or I'm just, frustrated, she can look at me like, what is it, Mary? Come on, talk to me. Or I can say, hey, when am I getting my grade increase? What do I need to do? And she'll turn around and say, here it is, or have you worked on this? Or write down for me what you've done and we can talk what needs to be done. So my one-on-ones are scheduled, but I really don't need them because I sit across from her and we have that daily interaction. However, there are others on our team that does have those one-on-ones because they don't have that opportunity.
Yeah, our entire development team is remote throughout the United States, so we don't necessarily have daily interactions. There's also, being 8 people on the team, I don't directly manage them on a day-to-day basis. So some of them, one-on-ones, I probably talk to everybody on the team maybe 2 to 3 times a week at a minimum. But one-on-ones are really the only opportunity that they have or that I have to talk to them in a one-on-one manner, every 2 weeks.
Okay. Yeah, I wondered the same thing as Mary. Like, maybe you guys are talking 4 times a day and there's just nothing to be said. But if you're talking in a structured way a few times a week and once a week they come in, I do suspect that there is a habit that's like, everything's fine. Like, it's fine. Can I go back to work? Because I don't know what we're going to talk about. And there's kind of, so one thing you might consider is you might ask them, so I like the idea of doing a retrospective and opening up a whole lot of other options. But think about what they're interested in. Most of your programmers are probably interested in new skills, career path, pay, advancement, greenfield projects, side fun projects, right? What's the next conference or training they're going to go to? Can they get you to buy this book or Udemy course, right? Or whatever. And then, of course, in theory, because you're small, they ought to be kind of concerned with, is the company going to go under tomorrow? Right? So, but because you are small, it seems like that, although it's just not small companies that go under, you might kind of, and then I don't know if you do annual evaluations where you could be, doing evaluation, giving that kind of feedback more often, even quarter. I know some companies have gone to quarterly evaluations. I guess my point here is ask them maybe in advance of the next one-on-one meeting to just put down the 3 biggest problems they had at work, or the 3 biggest concerns, or the 3 things that are top of mind. Not even to say that I want us to discuss, but you can just say, I want to know 3 big problems you see here that desperately need fixed in your world.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what they're going to say. That you might think they're going to say stuff about code. They might say money. They might say time. They might say my Mac's too slow. I don't know what they're going to say.
Okay.
But if almost every man and woman, every human loves to talk about the problems they have because they don't quite know how to deal with them and they don't really want to take them home. I don't know. What other thoughts I'd love to hear from other people in the group. I know we've got a few other folks joining us. If you want to reinvigorate your one-on-ones, what kind of questions open up new conversations? Okay, now we haven't heard from everybody. This is group participation. Come on, we don't have anything? Well, now it's just awkward. I'm going to
also say, one of the other things that I do is we have, I don't know if you've ever heard of 155.com.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's like a weekly check-in. And we use that religiously. So I'm kind of thinking about it now. Maybe one-on-ones are being too frequent because we're already kind of having a not face-to-face one-on-one, but they have the opportunity to air any issues that they have via their 15.5 on a weekly basis. So
now, what do you do with that 15.5 data?
I make a point to reply to every single thing that they say, and I use that as a method to provide immediate feedback on anything that's happened during the week. Give them props for anything they did that was, outstanding, or, maybe address any shortcomings that need to be worked on.
I wonder if there's an opportunity each one-on-one or to try this is to grab the last 15.5 and to just talk through it, because there's only so much you can type in your feedback, right? And there's only so much that you can get from there, because I recall 15.5 was little snippets, right? It's not like 3 pages of text.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have it set up to ask them quite a few questions.
Okay.
Like, what's your biggest challenge this week? Is there anything else you'd like to share? And then there's a bank of random questions that we've built up that it cycles through and asks them.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So
I just wonder if there's more fodder in there, especially your biggest challenge this week. Just maybe there's some opportunity to talk through that.
Yeah. I sound like a sales pitch for 15.5 now, but within there, you actually have the ability to flag their responses as like follow up on this on our next one-on-one, and then use the one-on-one interface within that product to.
Do you use that part of the tool?
Yeah, and we use that, and they flag things that they want to talk about again, or I flag things, but I feel like lately it's been very quiet, and so it started to prompt me like, how do I get that conversation back going and make sure that that things are really good and I'm just not hearing about stuff.
Do you have group meetings over like Hangout where everybody's face is on the screen, kind of like this, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. 5 times a week or more. Yeah.
5 times a week you get everybody together?
Yes.
Oh.
Probably 2 to 3 times a day. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I am remembering there is another tool you might look into. I don't know that all this can be solved with yet another tool, but there's another tool called Know Your Company. The CEO's name is Claire Liu, and she does a lot of wonderful writing on Medium. But it is like sort of an employee happiness score that's anonymous.
Okay.
So it gives you the ability, because right now, I suspect what you're wondering is, it got quiet. Is everything okay?
Yeah.
Like, we hope everything's okay. We don't see that people are leaving, but we want a little bit more information because it is so quiet.
Yep.
All right. Well, that kind of rounds out the hour. That's 53 minutes. I will ask if this was interesting and enjoyable. You can just put in chat that you like this format, better or worse than the old format. I can tell you I enjoy it when people turn on their video and when they talk. So for me, I realized that wasn't possible for everyone, but I want to thank those that were able to contribute to the conversation. I find that a discussion forum in some ways is much more just interesting and meaty than me talking at you. I also want to give folks here a couple of opportunities. One, I think we're going to do another tech leader workshop in Oregon in the fall. And then the other thing is, I'm spinning up, what I'm going to try is a new way that you can learn online remote through video lessons and hands-on exercises. I'm calling it the Tech Leader Boot Camp. It's going to go on, I think it's going to, you can hit my site and get on the waiting list. The price is $4.95. It lasts 100 days. So it's a lot of content. It's a lot of hands-on exercises to help you kind of shake loose and sharpen some of your skills. And then the last thing is, I think we might do another round of the communicating software design workshop that's entirely remote and is also very hands-on. And that one, I think, just watch the list. But this stuff some of this will come in the next couple weeks. Hey, thank you so much for coming. Here's my last question, and I'm going to ask it primarily to Mary and Ryan, because you were the two that spoke. Do you feel we should publish this video on YouTube, or, because we talked about some sensitive stuff, should we just go ahead and delete this recording?
I'm fine with the recording because we did not physically say names or company names, so we did not put anything in jeopardy.
Okay. Ryan?
Yeah. Good for
me.
me.
Maybe other people can learn from us. We'll see how that goes. All right. Thank you, folks, very much. Let's try this one more time next week and see how the format feels. And then I'd love, if you have private feedback for me and don't want to put it in chat, email me at marcus@marcusblankenship.com. I'd love to know if you like this format or the old one, just to give me a little bit of, radical candor feedback from you. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thanks. Have a good one.
Thank you for the opportunity for your assistance. It's much appreciated.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.